Hey guys, it's me, CP, and it's November 19th, Thursday morning. Good morning. And I'm going to go ahead and dive right into these questions. All right, so this one's coming in from England, actually, and one of our friends over there who's been watching, I believe it's Abbas, or maybe it's Abbas. Anyway, great question, and thank you for sending it in. What is your opinion on cardio done first thing in the morning on an empty stomach? From what I know, glycogen is depleted after sleeping, and the first source of energy, the first source of energy the body's going to go for is fat. With sugar levels low in the morning, it is sometimes hard to exercise on an empty stomach. Could you elaborate on that, please? And should weight training only be done on the high carb type days? All right, so great question, and there's a couple different questions in here that so I'll just answer them one at a time. My opinion on cardio done first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Now, there's actually a lot of different programs that will recommend this, and you know what? It is true that glycogen is depleted in the liver, not so much in the muscles, but in the liver first thing in the morning. And so it is true also that fat will be a dominant fuel source when you begin exercising. So for those who are still trying to kind of catch up with us, think about it this way. I'm going to go out and I'm going to eat some carbohydrate. So for those of you who are trying to figure out what glycogen is carbohydrate like fruit, like grains, root vegetables, sweet potatoes and potatoes, sugar, all these different things, all these different carbohydrates. When I eat them, they go into the stomach, push into the small intestine, they're absorbed through the small intestine, and they turn into glucose. Glucose is blood sugar. Now, blood sugar, and of course, that's sugar in the blood, traveling through the system. Every time my heart's pumping, it's pumping glucose through the system. Now, that glucose when it's absorbed by the liver, it's stored in the liver. We just call it glycogen. It does go through a conversion process, so it's slightly different, but essentially glucose stored in the liver is glycogen, and glucose, blood sugar, stored in the muscle is glycogen as well. So, but think about it like this. Your muscles are very stingy little tissues. And so they'll take glucose, but they don't want to give it back to the body if the body needs it. So when you're out there, say you're a marathoner or you're out exercising, you do your 50, 60 minutes of cardio, you deplete some of the glycogen stores, say you're running. And when running, your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings and your calves are going through a muscle contraction. When that happens, you deplete glucose, especially when you feel that burn build up in there. You feel that lactic acid. Lactic acid is, of course, a byproduct of the body burning through glycogen. It goes through this other conversion process where it's turned to pyruvate first, or pyruvic acid, and blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, you're depleting some of the glycogen that's in your muscle. And so when I eat carbohydrate, because I've actually got an empty tank, say the levels of glycogen in my glutes, quads, and hams, it was high. And then, of course, after my run, it's a little bit lower. So when I eat some carbohydrate, same thing goes through the digestive process. It turns into blood sugar. And then, sure enough, those muscles, the glutes, quads, and hams say, oh my gosh, I'm going to take this glycogen, and I fill my glycogen levels back up. Fantastic. Now, the only thing is that the muscle, it's going to hold that in this little fuel tank. All of our muscles are little fuel tanks for glycogen. And it holds glycogen, and it doesn't want to give it back up. It will not send glycogen back into the bloodstream. It wants to use that glycogen, and you can get glycogen out of the muscles after a muscle contraction. When you actually take that muscle through contraction again, that's when you're going to get the glycogen out of the muscle. However, when we eat, and of course goes through the digestive process, that sugar, when it enters the bloodstream, it goes through the liver first. And the liver's got its own little storage tank for glycogen. Typically, you can hold sometimes between, and there's different trains of thought out here, different information, but between typically 50 to 100 grams of glycogen. So your liver's holding on to that glycogen. Now, your liver's an extremely friendly organ and very generous, and it says, look, if the body needs sugar, the liver is going to say, oh, go ahead, you can have sugar. So the liver can take the glycogen, and the liver can't go through a muscle contraction, obviously, but it can say, hey, look, I'm going to store this glycogen, and I'm going to give it to the body when the body needs it. But if the body doesn't need it, I can hang back onto it, or I can even take glycogen or glucose if I'm full, if the liver's topped off with glycogen, it's going to say, hey, look, I can convert this, turn it into a triglyceride, and your body can store it as fat. So let's go back to that liver. Now the liver's full of glycogen. Say it's holding 75 grams of glycogen. We go to bed at night, and so we're sleeping. Now, the body still requires some sugar to function. We still have our heart, that's a muscle. We still have our diaphragm contracting so we can breathe, so we can, you know, or for a lot of us, so we can snore. Your brain still requires 5 grams of glycogen every hour, glucose I should say, every hour just to function. So here's the liver saying, hey, you can take some of my 75 grams of glycogen, and by the time you wake up, that liver might have gone down to 20 grams of glycogen. So now here we go. We say, all right, I got 20 grams of glycogen in my liver. Now I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go do some cardio on an empty stomach. Now, we've still got some glycogen stored in the muscle, you know, deep down in those glutes, quads, hams, and calves. So I get up and I start running. Sure enough, when you're running and when you're, you know, going through your long duration, low intensity cardiovascular exercise, or even if it's high intensity, well, now we're talking a completely different world, but so we're utilizing the glycogen that's stored in the muscle. But the muscle isn't giving glycogen back to the body, and sure enough, our brain still needs that glycogen to function. Really quickly, as you know, heart and lungs, it's going up, that liver's supplying those last 20 grams of glycogen, and before you know it, you can run out of blood sugar, and you get really dizzy, and you get faint, and if you haven't consumed enough glycogen to keep your muscles, especially those fuel tanks in the muscles full, you can hit a wall really fast. So you can hit a wall several different ways. Number one, when the muscle runs out of glycogen and when the liver runs out of glycogen. A lot of times you get into your morning workout and you feel really sick and nauseated and you're like, oh my God, I can't make it through this workout, especially when you're training on an empty stomach and you run out of that glycogen. So we can have all kinds of fun with this. When it comes to fat loss, once again, it's another really kind of a tricky question because it is true, fat will be oxidized at a relatively high rate, especially when we consume dietary, you know, carbohydrate, and we've got the blood sugar levels are up and they're high. That carbohydrate is going to be the #1 source of fuel for the body, for the muscles, and it's going to spare the body fat. It's tricky. You're really making me think on this one because do I support training on an empty stomach? Well, sometimes, but not really. I would actually prefer you're going to consume some kind of dietary carbohydrate before you work out, because if you do, now you can work out at a much higher intensity and reap the metabolic boosting benefits of high intensity exercise. Reason being, I don't want you to focus solely on that bout of cardio to burn body fat. Your body burns more fat at rest than during your session of cardiovascular exercise. So why not consume some carbohydrate, keep your blood sugar levels stabilized and maybe a little bit high, get a kick-ass workout first thing in the morning, boost the heck out of your metabolic rate, and then manipulate your nutrition later on in the day to maximize burning body fat for the last 12 hours of the day as opposed to during a 45-minute bout of cardio. That's my train of thought. You know, I apologize for taking you through the quick little physiology lesson, and I hope I didn't confuse anyone right off the bat, but you know what? Really good, applicable questions, but really when it comes to me doing what I like to do, I always like to keep my carbohydrates first thing in the morning. There's a lot more reasons than just manipulating body fat and burning. Like, I really want to put the body into a fed state, and we have to do that with carbohydrates first thing in the morning within 15 minutes of waking up. So I'd much rather you just jack your metabolism through the roof first thing in the morning with a really high intensity bout of exercise than manipulate your nutrition later on in the day. I can promise you, you will get better results. But remember, there's a lot more ways than one to skin the cat, and so you can get to your end results several different ways. And if you do prefer to train first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, that's fine too. But there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. So I hope I didn't confuse anyone out there, and thanks for asking such great questions. You know, it's fun to answer this. I usually don't like to take one side or the other more than anything, just to give you an overall, you know, a huge overview of what we're looking at. But really, when it comes to reaching your goals faster, then I truly, truly believe that the last solution that I gave you, it really will help you get there faster and with a lot, I think it'll be a lot less painful for you. So anyway, guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow with D.